All right, everyone, welcome back to another low budget logistics episode. This is your supply chain explainer. Big show today. Very, very important discussions today. I've got so many notes here in the notebook, always in cursive, to keep my Spanish teacher back in high school happy. So we're going to be talking about the thing, right? We all know what logistics news has come out in the last 48, 72 hours, whatever another day on to 72 hours is. 128. I was never good at math. I was a lot better at public speaking than I ever was at math. But we've got a very important one. We're going to be talking about tariffs on China. And are we back in another trade war? Are we doing this thing again? Right, trade war number 2, electric boogaloo. We'll see. But let's go ahead and start today. Let me advance my slide here. Just got, it's just me here. Producer Henry in the back, as always, giving me the evil eye. Got my cat Taco in the front here. It's going to be a good one. Let's advance our slide. All right, what has happened? This is always a question, right? So the U.S. has announced potentially as many as 100% tariffs on goods coming in from China. This is specifically in retaliation, or it's discussed as retaliation, but we will get to that in a moment. I want to take a moment to figure out how in the world we got here. Advanced slide. Like, what are we doing here? If you've forgotten, like most people have, I haven't. I've lived through all of it. It's been the best time to be a logistician. I'm so happy with my career choices. I don't regret them at all. I definitely didn't want to go into a better industry and field that's less volatile. No. I like this. I like seeing the house on fire all the time. It's just the best. Going back, travel with me if you will, back to 2017. If you remember back then, President Trump was in his first term in office. And at that time, we were sort of gearing up for hostilities with China, specifically because they were making moves towards taking and reclaiming what they consider a wayward province, Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is important specifically because they make semiconductor chips, and they are extremely advanced. So I watched a YouTube video, and if you don't understand like the complexity of these things, you should look it up, because it's like amazing how like humans constructed a machine to make these things, right? This is not a science podcast. This is not a science channel. That's not what we're doing here. But suffice it to say, Taiwan has done something that would take the U.S. decades to replicate. And what they're doing is making extremely advanced chips for computers and for technology that are incredibly difficult to replicate, right? The U.S. landing on the moon was probably easier in a lot of aspects than trying to replicate like building machines to build these incredibly advanced chips, right? Where you're having to literally bounce light off of droplets of, I think, molten tin. I'm not even sure I'm getting this right, but within like thousandths of a second. It's incredible. Again, look it up on another YouTube channel. But just know, China takes Taiwan, the US loses access to those. This is not a good thing. So the US said, look, we're gearing up for a potential war with China. Shush, keep it on the down low. And in President Trump's first term, he enacts Section 232, tariffs on China. Now, when we get into tariff policy, there are certain laws which enable the president to act in certain ways. Section 232 is a legal authorization for the president to enable tariffs on a certain country for a certain purpose in the interest of national security. So Section 232 tariffs are specifically targeting steel and aluminum, and this is for like unfair practices. Now, what's happening in real terms is that the Chinese government, the argument is the Chinese government is illegally subsidizing Chinese steel and aluminum work, and that allows Chinese manufacturers to produce steel and aluminum at a rate that is lower than the global market rate, right? So the idea being, hey, because the government is subsidizing us, we're able to come in at a lower price than the rest of the market, and we will capture market share because this is how markets work. People, especially in commodities, will tend to go with the lowest price. It is a thing. So what happened is that under Section 232, it allowed the president to enact tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum such that it would raise it back up to the global market rate. I don't think anyone has a problem with that, specifically because those tariffs stayed in place for all of President Trump's term in office and President Biden's term, right? Again, I think everyone can agree that's a bad practice. It's bad paid trade practice. It's not good. It is an illegal competition. And so we're going to level the playing field. Okay. So then when President Trump gets back into office in 2024, the president enables Section 301 tariffs. These are different tariffs. These are specifically for national security. I think I misspoke earlier. Just go with it, right? 232, unfair trade practices, 301, national security. So 301, again, these started in President Trump's second term in office. These are specifically targeted towards electric vehicles, some rare earth minerals, and semiconductors. Keep in mind rare earth minerals because that will be important later. All right, so again, put in place. No one has issues with this. This makes complete sense. Again, China is a near peer. They are an adversary of the USA's. It simply makes sense to start tariffing them, especially on areas that are important to the nation. Specifically rare earth materials, because those are primarily manufactured, or at least mined, in China. Rare earth materials exist, surprisingly. This is a thing I did not know. Rare earth materials are not rare on the earth for whatever reason. I don't know why scientists call them rare earth minerals, but the U.S. does have significant, I guess, reserves of them. We have enough of them. We just don't have enough mines. We're not mining rare earths here in the U.S. Right? We're talking specifically about things like lithium and cobalt, other things that are used in industrial processes, manufacturing processes, things that are important, yada, yada, yada. All you need to know is they are extremely important. The U.S. is trying to catch up to China in production of rare earth minerals, but it does take a while to set up a mine and get approvals and so on and so forth. So for right now, you should know that we are relatively reliant on Chinese rare earths. This will become important later. If you're taking the test, this is where your teacher, I had a history teacher who would literally stomp his feet when something was going to be on the test. He was great. Fellow Marine. All right, so then here's where things start to get interesting. All that was boring. Here's where we get interesting. IEEPA, which we've talked about on this channel before. This is the Emergency Powers Act, which allows the president to enact tariffs. Again, emergency, this is important. That word specifically is important. Okay, so 232, unfair trade practices. 301, national security. IEEPA, which is another one, a different legislative authorization for emergencies. This is where we start to see the trade war actually bloom into what we now know and refer to as the trade war. So the president announces blanket tariffs on the world and specifically raises tariffs on China to 10%. This comes in February 4th. This day is important. Right behind me is an Iowa-class battleship. This is the first salvo in what we call the trade war. Are you not advancing? There we go. All right. Got a Chinese battleship here. So then February 4th happens. President Trump raises tariffs on China to 10% in addition to 232 and 301 tariffs, right? So we're starting to stack tariffs at this point. So then on February 10th, China returns a salvo in the trade war and raises tariffs on U.S. imports again to 10%. And then and then the U.S. and China just start bickering at this point, right? We see the Iowa class with China. So from March until April, the U.S. just starts going back and forth, raising tariffs on each other, right? China and the U.S. just start going back and forth in this bicker fest, so that they both basically land at or about 125% of the cost of an item for import into the respective countries. Now, this effectively stops all trade between China and the U.S. simply because it becomes illogical to start importing goods from either country. It is difficult to say who actually wins in this war, because U.S. importers are a lot and are a very vocal group here in the U.S. We don't make a whole lot of stuff here. Well, we do make a lot of stuff here in the U.S., but importers are like, think of people like Target, Walmart, stuff that you're going to buy. They start raising alarms to the president, like, we can't keep this up. Like, and then as a result of this trade war over the month of like April and May, the U.S. economy starts absolutely tanking. Stock market is in basically free fall. I forget how many points it actually fell, but it is bad, such that like important CEOs of large companies go and start talking to the president saying, we can't keep this up. It will hurt you, President Trump. It will hurt this politically. It will hurt you if you keep this up. We need something to change. On the other side, though, China makes a lot of its money by exporting to the rest of the world. Primarily the U.S. We are, or at least we were, one of their largest trade partners. So we're not spending any money with China. They're not making any money with the U.S., and U.S. importers are starting to lose money hand over fist because the stock market's in free fall. So who really wins? Don't really know. It really just feels like everyone is just kind of at this stalemate and something has to budge. Both sides, I want to make this very clear, both sides are impacted by this. It's just that China is not as great with their economic numbers and people don't really trust them. We won't talk about that. This is not a political part. It's not a political video. So anyways, the trade war happens in the course of a month, and then it just kind of burns out. And both sides, China and the U.S., both agree to resolve the hostilities and return tariffs down to a level where trade can start to happen again. And so as of right now, we're probably, I think, about 30% on imports out of China. Is that it? Is that my slide? Boop. Nope. Okay. So hostilities come to a close. And then the line from the president in October is that China, let me advance my slide. Boop. China put export controls on key products, including rare earth minerals. Now, this is where we start back up. Because again, as I mentioned, rare earth minerals are incredibly important to many, many industrial processes and a lot of manufacturing. They're also important to things like electronics and AI, yada, yada, yada. This is the next salvo in what's happening. So, where's my slide? I'm like the worst at this. So, China starts to discuss export controls on rare earth minerals, and the U.S. on October 10th, President Trump announces, if you do this, we will slap 100% tariffs back on all your products and we will stop importing. We're going to come to a halt. And the threat is that he will enact those tariffs starting November 1st. This is important if you're an importer. You've got like 30 days to get your stuff on a boat. I cannot say that enough. But right now we're going to talk about ProShip. My good friends over at ProShip, they have been a huge supporter of me and this channel. And I cannot say enough good things about them. ProShip is literally the last shipping software you will ever need. I cannot say this enough. They're fantastic people. They are integrated with the companies that you're already working with. They're integrated with NetSuite. They're integrated with whatever. I forget all of the different companies that you could be integrated with already and using to ship. They have excellent relationships with carriers. They have excellent relationships with basically everyone in the industry. They are like fantastic. I've had the privilege of working with ProShip before. I went from a bad software, maybe not a bad software. I should not say it was a bad software. It was decent. Just wasn't able to do what I needed them to do. ProShip came in and solved the problem immediately. So we didn't have issues with batching of shipments. We didn't have issues with like return time on labels. If you are in e-commerce, I cannot say enough. I will bang the drum forever. ProShip is the last shipping software you will ever need, and they are excellent. The other thing you can do to support the channel, right, like ProShip and my friends over there, who I hope are watching, if you want to support the channel, buy a t-shirt. Go to lowbudgetlogistics.com. You can get this snazzy shirt. It comes in 3 different colors. It's great. I love it. Surprisingly, the hardest part of filming these videos is not content. It's not like research. It is literally finding this shirt every day. I have a lot of black clothing, and it just kind of gets lost. And I like tend to think like, oh, I put it in this place and then I forgot where I put it. I'm very absent-minded. This is why I'm not in inventory. I am in transportation. So if you want to support the channel, lowbudgetlogistics.com. You can buy a shirt there. Also, LinkedIn, we are getting to like 5,000 connections, followers on LinkedIn. I think I'm at like 4,930. So if we hit 5,000, I will make a special announcement here. We'll probably do some sort of live event. Maybe I can convince Bill Shube to join me. He's over talking about Parabola and the joys of working with AI. Parabola, great for the show, but that's not who our sponsor is today. Not that I'm getting paid from either of these companies, but you know, I do it for the love of the game. Again, thanks so much ProShip for being a great support. I will use whatever platform I have to hype y'all up because you are really fantastic shipping software, excellent, robust, will get you from whatever level you're at currently to whatever level you want to be. So ProShip, again, the last shipping software you will ever need. Cannot recommend them enough. All right, so let's continue. What happens next? This is the great question for everyone in the supply chain and a lot of industries that are importing. What happens next? Don't know. There has been a lot of discussion from the Chinese side that they're not raising hostilities. They're not doing anything that's crazy. We'll see. It's going to be a question of who blinks first. The president has made extremely clear that he will place tariffs on Chinese goods. He does not necessarily care. He will do what he thinks is right? And he will use whatever powers are given to him to do so. He's shown a willingness to tariff China. If I was importing, I would be working with my suppliers and getting approval to ship on the air. I would be moving things as quickly as possible. There are probably 1 to 2 sailing days or sailing weeks left. So if you're shipping, if you have full container loads, you better be getting reservations. Probably prices are going to spike for transportation on a boat. It's probably a rough time, right? I say this because this is exactly what happened in April. I was very much importing back then, and literally my phone was blowing up constantly from people telling me, hey, have you seen the news? So get approval to ship air, bite the bullet. But I think what's interesting specifically about all of this, I think that American importers have probably brought most of their inventory in already, especially for the holiday season. They've probably been working with suppliers for months now, since the tariff war began. They've been working with their suppliers to actually move up their delivery dates overseas to get volume into the U.S. because we've been in a large unknown. We don't know, right? We're in this kind of ceasefire mentality with China on the trade war, but at any point in time, it could have just exploded back up again. So I think a lot of importers have already brought their peak volume into the U.S. I think that's already happened. I want to say it happened in June and July of this year. It usually does happen around those times, right? We start to see peak volume coming in August and September. I think it bumped forward to July, June and July timeframe. I think there might be a lot of excess inventory in the U.S. that will be available for holiday gift giving. So I don't think it will be necessarily a huge issue right now, right? I don't think November is going to be a major issue for actual like shipping. Now the market is going to correct. The market is kind of over the weekend has just plummeted back to that kind of corrected zone. It's taking all this information in and it's making a change. So the S&P a little bit low the last couple of days. Bitcoin dropped pretty significantly. But I think a lot of retailers, at least for the last half of this year, if tariffs go in, I don't think they'll be as affected as they will be in the first quarter of next year. Because specifically, again, I think that they've brought all their inventory in, ready to sell because things have been kind of chaotic the last 6-7 months. So I think where you really will start to see the administration start to budge is in the January and February timeframe. I think that you might see a lot more importers and CEOs going to the president and saying, look, we can't keep this up. We're really getting affected and the economy will suffer because of these tariffs. Who knows? I am not the president, clearly. I'm just a dude in a shirt, little toy shirt, but I've lived it through it. So I think that these will kind of hit hard and fast. They did before, right? We're talking a month's span in the course of a year where things just got really chaotic. So yeah, I think that they will, if we start with 100% tariffs, it just stops all trade whatsoever. And then they start negotiating. So if you're an importer, get your stuff moving as quickly as possible. This is something that all of your freight forwarders and carriers are familiar with. We've all done it before. So at this point, it's kind of old hat. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's show. I wish I could stop on more hopeful news. Kind of don't know. But the best thing is at least we're not going back and forth. And there's not a bunch of questions like there was before. Because trying to navigate like when something shipped out of a port, its port departure date was a little bit difficult this last time. If we ramp directly up to 100% tariffs, you won't see that. It'll just be as simple as like things will ship until the 31st and then stop. So sailings will start getting blanked. Yeah, prices will start to increase on shipping. And yeah, there you go. That is today's news in the supply chain brought to you by Low Budget Logistics. If you enjoyed this, if you made it all the way to the end, please like, subscribe to the video. That helps us grow. We are one of the only channels here on YouTube actually talking about logistics and specifically these things. So if you liked it, great. Hit that button, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when I do upload new content. I will try to continue to upload new content every week. I snip this down. If you haven't noticed, I snip this particular thing down to give you just the news stories that you might specifically be interested in. Otherwise, I think there's a video there, if I'm not incorrect in how I lay these things out, for you to enjoy. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.